You clicked on Movie Monkey channel. Listen, I'll explain an erotic horror story from 1982 called Cat People. Spoilers may come along as I explain. Have a good day. The story may have its origins from centuries ago. Primitive human dwellers in an unknown place, selects a sacrificial maiden, then drags and tie her to a tree. When night sets in, a growl of a fierce animal is heard from nearby. A black panther emerges, then approaches the girl tied on the tree. It rests its paws on the body of the girl. It's not clear whether the girl is killed or what. A similar panther is in a cave. Then an old woman in black cape brings a girl to the cave. It is clear that the girl was brought in not as food for the panther but something else. The story suggests that the panther mated with the woman that makes us wonder what follows after the copulation. Now it pans out to the present. Irena Gallier, a woman in early 20s, arrives in New Orleans airport. It seems she has nowhere to go. Then, she tries to make a call to a public phone. But, before she could make the call, a man approaches her. The man introduces himself as her brother, Paul. It is clear that Irena came to New Orleans all the way from Canada to meet his long-lost brother Paul. They hugged, exchange "how are yous," and welcome greetings, then they proceed to Paul's home via taxi. Irena meets Paul's housekeeper, Femily, a descendant of Creole people. Femily tells Irena that she too are orphaned like her and Paul. Irena knew nothing about Paul except few memories when she was 4, the time they were separated. Irena grew in an orphanage managed by Robinson's family in Canada. She admits to dream of Paul when they were separated and fantasize of being rescued by him. Paul surprises Irena with a cabinet full of memorabilia from their childhood, then shows her some photos of them with their parents. He picks up 3 small balls and juggles it while reciting some verses that go with it to remind Irena of their early life with their parents who works in a circus. Irena takes over the juggling of balls and continues the verses. It establishes their connection as siblings. At night, while Irena is asleep, a mystery starts to unfold. Paul comes to Irena's bedroom then swiftly jumps to the toe rail of the footboard of the bed like a wild animal. His eyes holds a passionate look over his sleeping sister, Irena. In the morning, Paul was not in his room. Femily informs her that Paul was early to get up for the church mission where he works. Irena expects Paul will show him around town to familiarize herself. Instead, Femily suggested to buy a guidebook in town for herself. Meanwhile, during the night, a prostitute was bitten badly in ankles by a black leopard. She was able to get out of the room before becoming food of the beast. The leopard was trapped in the room. The police secured the area in the morning while waiting for New Orleans Zoo personnel. Later, New Orleans Zoo personnel shoots the black leopard with a tranquilizer through the hotel's window. The zoo staffs picked up the sleeping big black cat and brought to the zoo. Irena went to the church where Paul works. However, the church keeper told her that Paul didn't report the day. Irena decided to go home. While on a taxi, she spotted the New Orleans Zoo. She alighted from the taxi then went straight to the zoo. She was drawn to a black panther that was captured from earlier that day that mangled a prostitute in a hotel. Having attended art classes in Canada, she tried to sketch the black panther. She's unbelievably hooked to sketching that she remained until it was dark and she's the only visitor left in the zoo. Then, the curator Oliver approaches to tell her it's past the closing time of the zoo already. Feeling afraid from the curator, she walks faster leaving her things to flee. Later, the curator found her perched above a tree. Oliver wonders how she get there so fast being a woman at that. She tells Oliver she's scared of him. Oliver asks why she's afraid of him and not afraid of the panther. She says she understands animals. Then, they ask each other's names. Suddenly, Irena feels dizzy. Oliver invites her to his office for some medication. Irena realizes that she could be hungry, the reason why she felt dizzy. She invites Oliver to dine with her, which led to Oliver persuading her to work at the zoo's gift shop. Irena accepts the job. She met Alice, Oliver's almost girlfriend but not really co-worker in the zoo. At one time, Alice helps Irena tend the gift shop when students crowded to buy. In one of their conversations in a bar, Irena unintentionally mentions to Alice that she was a virgin and that she's afraid to do it because she has never met someone who she wants to do it with. That day, Irena come closer to the black panther because it's roaring strongly to the cleaner of the cage. Oliver attached a prod to the cleaner to somehow manage the panther's bad behavior. Then it happened. The cleaner inserted his hand with the prod to the panther's cage. The panther was able to bite his arm in a flash. He's not able to pull it off on time. In few seconds, he is fiercely battling getting his arms out of the cage while the panther is mangling his flesh by its sharp fangs. Oliver helps him by trying to pull his arms out of the cage. With the strong bite of the panther, his arm was completely torn from his shoulders. His blood gushes on the pavement as he lay weakened by the loss of blood and trauma. Later, the cleaner died from the injury. Oliver decides to euthanize the black panther. He went to the cage with a gun, only to find that the panther was not in the cage anymore. Some slumps of tissues were left on the cage as if it evaporated in the air. Paul turns up in Irina's room. Paul tells him that she is ready and the evidence is the burning desire she has for Oliver and that she is wet between her legs. Irina is angered by Paul's obscenities. Paul continued saying that they have to escape from something with the participation of both of them. At this point, we had a hint that he is insinuating that they should copulate to escape something. Then, Paul tried to have sex with Irina. Irina did not like Paul's behavior and does not consent to his advances. When she had the chance, she jumped on the balcony, landing swiftly on the ground with an animal's agility. Irina ran to the street while Paul started chasing her. Luckily, she chanced on a police car on patrol. Paul disappeared from the portion of the street he was last seen. Irina did not make a big fuss about it with the police. She said she thought someone was chasing her. The police was about to go, but the dog in the police car's backseat starts barking annoyingly. This prompted the police to investigate further. They ask Femily about the basement, which Femily replies she does not go there. In the basement, the police find shackles, bones and remains of dozens of corpses. The police concludes that Paul is a serial killer who fed his victims to a panther. They decided to call in Oliver and Alice to inspect the place. The police officer reveals that Paul Gallier has been in and out of psycho wards since he was 12 years old and that he is a religious fanatic. When Oliver asks how Paul could have handled a panther, the police reveals that Paul's parents are carnival people who trains big cats like lions and panthers. But one night, they killed themselves. When Alice asks about Irina's probable involvement, Oliver was quick to reply that Irina has just met his brother a week ago. The police has no reason to suspect Irina. The police brings Femily to the precinct for further interrogation. Oliver gives Irina a refuge in his house because of police's concern over Irina's safety. The next day, Oliver brings Irina to his plantation where Irina meets Yates, Oliver's housekeeper. Later, they catch crab from the river. Later that night, Oliver initiates lovemaking with Irina. However, Irina refuses for some reason. They slept separately. Meanwhile, Paul woos a woman who attends a burial in a cemetery. They end up in a hotel making love. After lovemaking, Paul wakes up in the hotel's bathroom naked with some tissues like those found in the zoo's cage where the panther mysteriously disappeared. Inside the room, the woman's bloodied hand is torn to its forearm. The woman's lifeless body is wrapped in a blanket soaked in blood. At probably the same time, Irina woke from her sleep. Watches over Oliver for a while, then goes out. Then, she removes her loose clothes making her fully naked. Her animal's eyes sees a snake, a rabbit and a nearby owl. She chooses the easier prey, the rabbit. In short chase, she caught the rabbit. Oliver wakes up, clicks the lampshade light, then naked Irina with bloodied mouth and chest was illuminated. Irina shouts to Oliver not to look at her. Oliver complies. He shuts the light out. Oliver and Alice are called to inspect the new killing at the hotel. At night, Oliver finds Irina who packed her things apparently trying to stay away from him. Oliver explains that he's been looking for someone to love and she's the one for him. Irina challenges Oliver if he would still love her without sleeping with her. Oliver replies he would take care of her. All their conversation was heard by Paul who is perched atop a nearby tree. The police start searching for the panther on the loose. The New Orleans staff help with the search including Oliver and Alice. Oliver was angered with his crew who blames him for not shooting the panther when it was on the cage in the zoo. Oliver punches his crew but apologizes immediately, which makes Alice wonder about Oliver's sudden change in behavior. Later, Alice expresses his concern over Oliver, about being obsessed to Irina without insisting herself to Oliver. Amidst a rainy night, Paul enters Irina's room by crashing on its windows then begs Irina to save him by making love with him. Paul reveals that their parents are also brothers and sister just like them and that they will be saved by making love. Irina refuses Paul's proposition just like she refused him in his first attempts. Paul picks up a pointed glass shard and threatens Irina. Irina submits to Paul's wishes. Irina hugs Paul. She nudges her nose to Paul's face and neck like cats preparing for lovemaking. Paul handed the glass shard to Irina. Paul falls to his knees in disbelief of Irina's sudden change of mind. Then Irina raises the shard pouncing Paul's face but Paul was quick to raise his hand shoving the attack wounding his arms. Irina quickly escapes through the door leaving bloodied Paul on the floor. Paul stands in front of the mirror, then looks at his hands gradually turning into cat's paws, his eyes pupils now resembling like the cat's eyes. Oliver and Alice arrives in his pickup. Alice prepares dinner while Oliver goes to Irina's room. A loud animal growls inside the room. Alice hears it from the kitchen. As Oliver enters the room, he sees Paul in near-complete transformation into a panther. Oliver hand grabs something that looks like a T-square from the table behind him. Knowing that the weapon he picked is no match to a panther, he pulled the curtain then drapes it to the panther while shouting to Alice to get the gun. Then he jumps to the other side of the bed, quickly lifting the bed to protect him from the panther's attack. Then the door opens with Alice shooting immediately on the panther, hitting it while jumping toward the window. The panther fell to the ground in front of the house and was killed from the gunshot. Irena was there, then weeps on her brother's demise. The panther's remains was brought to the zoo. Oliver prepares the corpse for necropsy. He slices through the panther's abdomen. Upon opening its chest, a decomposing human hand pops up. Then, a greenish smoke consumes the body of the dead panther so quickly that Oliver didn't have time to document it. Some tissues remained on the table very similar to the tissues left on the previous case of disappearing panther on the zoo's cage. Irena visits Family in jail to inform about Paul's death. She asks Family what to do with her life. Family replies that she should live like her brother, hidden, sometimes in jails, never loved. She rode on a train to a random place. She dreams of Paul bringing her to the place of their origin, a leafless tree where panther rests on its branches. One of the panther tells her to go back to her world. She returns to town, then she follows Alice and tried to kill her but fails. Then she went to Oliver's house, undresses and offers herself disregarding the consequences. Oliver succumbs and they made love. Wait, it suddenly came to me, I have to remind you that this is Movie Monkey channel. The choice is yours to hit this one, and this, and that one there so notations will appear on your device. Now, going back to the story. In the middle of the night, Irena turns into a black panther. She climbs up on the bed over Oliver who wakes up from her growls. She tried to hurt Oliver but ends up fleeing to the balcony instead. The police cornered Irena in a panther form in the middle of the town's steel bridge. The police wait for the zoo personnel's disposition. Then Oliver arrives at the bridge. But before they can make a move, the panther dives to the river. In a hunch, Oliver rushes to his plantation house by the river. He rowed the dinghy then paddled to the small port in front of the house. He alights from the boat with a loaded shotgun in his hand. While walking towards the house, his head bumps to something hanging overhead. He looks up to the freshly mangled dead body of his housekeeper Yates. She found Irena inside the house dressed in his clothes. Oliver points the gun to Irena then asks why she didn't kill him. Irena replies she loves Oliver, that's why he was spared. Irena asks Oliver to kill her, to which Oliver refuses. Then, Irena slowly undresses asking Oliver to free her from the curse by making love with her again. But before doing so, Oliver ties Irena's arms and ankles to the bed. Then, they made love passionately. Irena knows she would turn again to panther after lovemaking and has to kill again to become human, but this time, she's not gonna do it. She and her brother Paul could have turned themselves to become complete human by making love. But her refusal from incestuous affair with Paul, his brother, the last male of their kind, casts her to live as a panther, forever. The story ends here. Months later, Oliver was seen in the zoo feeding a tamed black panther by his hand. I have this feeling that the panther is actually Irena. Alice approaches Oliver, then they kiss. Thank you for watching.